I want you to take a few moments to look at the photo behind me. Take a look around the room. Where do your eyes lead you? Imagine yourself entering this room. Whether or not you're actively aware of it or not, each of us has something in mind, a function we need or want at that moment. Whenever we walk into a room, we're searching for this destination, the destination that best suits our needs. We look for the places where we can function. For instance, if you love playing piano, your destination is obvious. If you're elderly or infirmed, you might look at those white chairs. Are they sturdy? Are they high enough to get out of? If you're young and you're agile, you might look at those very same chairs and think, is it close enough to a cord for me to plug my laptop into? If you're anything like me, you're looking at that sofa in the distance and you're thinking, after a long flight from New York City, I want to take a nap. Each and every one of us has our own needs. Whenever possible, the destination we provide is we give enough thoughtful design that aims to meet them. As a designer, my job is to create warm, comfortable, inviting environments that include a multitude of destinations within each room. As designers, it's not just how we do something, how it looks or feels. In the words of, let's see, I have to click here. In the words of late Steve Jobs, design is how it works. Design is how we work. Design is how we work to thoughtfully create subtle, organic pathways leading to a desirable destination. When we thoughtfully design, the pathways are guided by principle that form follows function. To illustrate my point, I refer to one of the world's most iconic and recognizable visual destinations. Not a room, not a building or a park. It's a design we all know so well that we've stopped even considering the design itself. Google. The Google landing page. This is a form-following function in its most fundamental sense. We no longer even consider the design of this page. The destination is clearly in the search box. Nevertheless, of course, beautiful design matters. Each destination must engage both the mind and an emotional response, a story, an experience. I find that sometimes the most subtle detail can elicit the most powerful emotions. When I design interiors, I seek to achieve a marriage of elegance and comfort, form and function. I ask you to look at this photo again. This is a room that I designed for New York's famous Woolworth building. Originally developed by F.W. Woolworth Company, this magnificent size skyscraper, served as an office building for the tenants that included the Manhattan Project and Nikola Tesla. Tesla, it's worth noting, stayed here for only a year. He was evicted for not paying rent. From 1913 to 1930, this iconic green copper-crowned edifice was the tallest building in the world. It's 241.4 meters. By contrast, the tallest building now in the world is in Dubai, standing at 828 meters. There we go. There's the contrast. Architect Terry Despont designed the layouts, designed and selected most of the interior details. Alchemy asked Stan Ponte, a senior executive at Sotheby's International Real Estate, to bring me in. They brought him in to launch the advertising campaign and handle the international sales. I first met Stan when we worked earlier on a collaboration in Midtown Manhattan called the Parkwood. At his suggestion, Alchemy brought me on board to work with the Woolworth Project and presented me with the opportunity to design something unique, really to be a showcase throughout the world. My goal was clear. Alchemy brought me on board to work on the Woolworth Project with him, which presented me with an opportunity to design this premier model apartment. My goal was to create an environment that would reflect the sophisticated lifestyles of his well-traveled clientele. Through design, I sought to appeal to lovers of history, architecture, art, and lovers of gracious living. I also sought to create a space worthy of the extraordinary design and elegant craftsmanship that already appeared in the walls, floors, and ceilings throughout this magnificent building. With that in mind, I paid microscopic attention to everything I did, no matter how large or small. In this image, for instance, I engaged Fromentel. You might know them in London. It's an atelier to create hand-painted wallpapers meant to reflect the sky, as seen from this master suite on the 41st floor. I used the highest level of custom finishes and furnishings, carpets, and engaged the services of several renowned art consultants to grace the walls throughout the apartment with impressive art. I sought to bring elegance and comfort to this landmark space. Just as important, I wanted to create the experience of seamlessly transitioning from the chaotic world outside in Manhattan to a personal, solid space within this destination. In other words, I wanted to create an atmosphere that would be to disconnect. As I mentioned, when we design, it's critical to establish a visual and emotional connection. And that connection can be strengthened by disconnection. Solitude, tranquility, serendipity. One of my primary goals is to find unexpected ways to bring new experiences to old environments. To connect by disconnecting from our surroundings. Consider this building, located on 23rd Street and 5th Avenue in Manhattan, just across the street from the Flatiron Building. American architect Henry J. Hardenberg designed this 1883 space as a small outpost for the Western Union, arguably the most connected of all communications in 1883 would have been the Western Union. Hardenberg, it should be noted, also designed the famous buildings, the Dakota, the Plaza Hotel, and the original Waldorf Astoria. When I first arrived in New York City 36 years ago, I rented a tiny studio just around the corner from this building. I recall standing outside looking into Madison Square with this building at my back, looking up at the one of my favorite buildings, Metropolitan Life. It was pouring rain, I had a cheap umbrella. It turned out inside out, and all I can think many years later is how grateful I was standing there to be a young man in New York. Little would I know that years later, the opportunity presented itself for me to take the entire floor of that very same building to create my offices. This space had been stripped of all its details. There was nothing really left to talk about as one's grand existence. At the moment, of course, I jumped at the opportunity to sign a 10-year lease. This is the photo of before, this is the photo of before. And though you can't see it, I'm sure you can tell that this building, it housed history, it housed dreams, it housed countless stories of lives led. All of these things mean something to me, and as designers, I feel we can tap into this in a global sense. The following is a picture of how I renovated the space. I wanted to acknowledge the rich history. I wanted to integrate function with the spirits of the past in mind. My goal was to create a new experience from an existing space. Now, I'm not a Hebrew expert. I studied interior design at Arizona State University, which amounts to something like being the opposite of studying Hebrew in Jerusalem, or something like that. But in preparing for this speech, I looked up the Hebrew word for disconnect, and I think this offers some valuable insight. In English, we only have one word for disconnect, which simply put means to interrupt something from something else. But in Hebrew, the word to disconnect is lenatek. Thank you. Okay, I hope, I have it written down here. I hope I pronounced that correctly. This verb means simply to disconnect something, such as a toaster or a table lamp. But in Hebrew, there's also lahitnatek. Correct? Thank you. I'm getting there. This also means to disconnect. It comes from the same root, but it's a relative reflective form of the verb. It implicitly means to disconnect from oneself. It's a word that doesn't quite exist in English. In my tradition, we don't have a history, this concept of disconnecting oneself. But for Jews, you have a tradition of disconnecting yourselves every single week. That's probably why you have a word for it. As I understand it, that's exactly what the Sabbath is. You connect by disconnecting. The Sabbath provides a destination, a spiritual destination. Connect to your faith. Connect to your family. Connect to your home. Connect to your community. Take one day each week to connect to what's important. Shut out the noise. Turn off the phones. For one day each week, don't check emails. Don't send that text. It's a beautiful idea. A meticulous design. Like what I tried to accomplish with the Woolworth design, a seamless transitioning from the chaotic world outside to a uniquely personal and intimate space inside. Today, more than ever, we need to find time to disconnect. You read more and more about people observing a digital Sabbath. That people, regardless of religious faiths, are taking some dedicated time to disconnect from their electronic devices. To disconnect so that we can connect with our friends, their family, and what really is important to us. Last week, New York Times columnist David Leonhardt, one of the most brilliant minds at the New York Times, wrote about this very concept. He wrote about the decision that he and his wife made to try a so-called tech Sabbath, with the concern that they had of spending an entire day without their phones. He said, it was wonderful. We hung out with our friends without distraction. It felt productive, rejuvenating, and yes, fun. My family liked it so much we've done it again. Leonhardt is describing a phenomenon that has become more and more important in our device-driven world. Connecting by disconnecting. Lahit, not tech. Disconnecting yourself. Seek your destination and go there. For some, yes, that was supposed to happen a moment ago. And then that. You get the point. For some, oh, and that too. That's a digital Sabbath right there. Oh, I really went out of sequence. Here we go. Seek your destination and go there. For some, it's the piano bench. For others, it's the white chair. For some, it's family. It's friends. For me, a perfect destination is one that serves the desired function and is intuitively found by the user. Creating such destinations inspires my work. This is a room I designed for a close-knit family that loves sports and outdoor activities. This is their vacation home in Aspen, Colorado. I'm particularly fond of this room, in part because of the many destinations that I was able to create there within that space. The warmth of gathering around a roaring fireplace adjacent to a gaming table for two, or a laptop. A quiet alcove. Let's get back to the quiet alcove. There's your quiet alcove. Perfect for reading or stretching out for an après-ski nap. Friendly game of pool with a raised spectator bench for those who want to participate in the game. I love this room. many destinations to accommodate the ever-changing needs of a close-knit family within a communal space. Now, I'll begin to tell you about the Woolworth Building. The 3,300 square foot residence I was engaged to design would serve as a centerpiece of Stan Ponte's global marketing strategy. Meet Stan Ponte. My work there caught the eye of Israeli-born talk show host Daniela Ohad. Many of you may know her. She's genius. Who invited me to discuss the history and design and redevelopment of this remarkable building on her monthly talk show. Meet Daniela. One person who watched our interview was Carmel Zamir, Vice President of the Israeli Building Center, located far, far away in the mythical city of Tel Aviv. From this brief conversation, she invited me to speak at this conference. Meet Carmel. Why am I telling you all of this? Why am I telling you about my friend Stan, or Daniela, or Carmel, or for that matter, what's a Gentile from Long Island doing in Elad, of all places, on the week after my family's celebration of Thanksgiving? It's about personal connections. More than ever, they all still matter. In architecture and design, you won't succeed if you don't make these personal connections. Designers, we are collaborative people. We thrive on feedback and insight. We need it in order to be the very best we can. Personal relationships open the door to spontaneous opportunities. Case in point, Alan Tanksing offering amateur Hebrew lessons at a conference in Israel. Spontaneous. For me, it doesn't get more spontaneous than that. Personal connections in our field mean everything. Establishing personal connections with our clients encourages them to be collaborative with us. This cannot be overemphasized. Take, for example, the Parkwood residential development. This is where I first met Stan Ponte. Our client was real estate developer Henry Justin. Naturally, Henry's interest was to deliver a product that he could sell, high-end residents that would practically sell themselves. I was brought in to tell the building's story through design, detail, and craftsmanship. We each had our own interest in the project, and when combined, we compelled us to push ourselves even further, to enhance, to improve, and beautify. Once again, the collaborative process inspired me to do a better job than I might have otherwise. We created a common goal of making something saleable, marketable, and beautiful, and at a cost to maximize Henry's profits. That defines collaboration. I described how personal connections got me here today, literally, Stan to Daniela to Carmel. But personal connections and collaborations also got me here professionally. Soon after completing my studies in New York and moved to New York, I was introduced to the legendary American decorator Mark Hampton. This happened through a series of newfound and oblique connections. Hampton famously decorated the White House interiors for President George Bush and Bill Clinton. He counted Brooke Astor and Estee Lauder among his clients. Mark hired me, and under his tutelage, I gained an understanding of the hierarchy of spaces from public to private and how to look at design. The connectiveness, the flow, the hierarchy of spaces from public to private within a residence or a public space. I looked at spaces and layouts of furniture within a space as functions within the rooms. I learned that private areas of a residence need be more intimate. I internalized the practical presence of furniture and the beautification. I wouldn't be where I am today without his mentorship and guidance. It was at this time that I was deeply immersed in the essential principles of good design, of classic scale, proportions, of quality materials, and extraordinary craftsmanship. These principles created what I like to call my toolkit. It's what is ingrained in my thinking as a designer. I learned the importance of architectural history, the fundamentals of classic interior design, the history of a society, the history of innovation, that all these factors combined created and to create the most useful and memorable experiences. Most important, I learned how to apply and integrate this knowledge when approaching a new design opportunity. I learned to apply my architectural understanding towards my aesthetic flow, to deliver both form and function, to understand when to bend and how to break the rules of design when the appropriate occasion arises. I began this speech by asking you to find our destination. To find the places where we function. Providing this destination is the benchmark of my approach to design. It enables space to provide a powerful and memorable experience both to the collective and to the individual. Now, of course, destination doesn't just happen. By destination, we must reach a destination. We must journey to get there. This journey also inspires my approach to design. I need to ask myself, how do I arrive at my destination? How do I get to that piano? Do we walk around the chairs? Do I cut straight through? Do I step on the carpeting? How do we physically, voila, how do we physically move through the space to reach it? What's the logic? What are the visual cues? We can design places along the way to pause, to gather, to sleep, to make the journey itself a serendipitous destination. This may sound esoteric, but I think it's specifically these considerations that help create the creative minds all over the world design memorable spaces. I hope that made sense. Form fused with function. Journeys leading to destinations. Connecting, disconnecting. And through this process, we need to create emotion. I'll leave you with this one last story. I was working on a project with Mark Hampton, and we were standing inside a room. We were sizing up the ceiling, checking out the floor, taking measurements, what we do. And I'm going into this whole shtick about journeys, about destinations, all of this. And I remember Mark just looks up at me and he says, quote, "Make it work, and make it beautiful," and he went on his way. Thank you. That's what I like.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for your fascinating presentation.
Thank you.
You are renowned as an expert colorist. Please explain what does that mean?
That's a very funny thing to start with, thank you. Well, I've been doing it a long time, and color, of course, is really what's around us, is what can often change our mood. So I think if any of us in the field are anything other than expert colorists, then we don't know what we're doing yet. So it might be too obvious a thing to say.
Okay, but when you start to design a project, do you have already a color palette in your mind, or is it something that evolves along the process?
Good question. Usually I don't. I need to work with my clients and hear them. I had a business partner for a period of time, and she would often say to people, "Don't be a color coward." because people are terrified to paint a room red or use a wallpaper or what have you. I need to find out where my clients find value, how adventurous they are, or what they think about the use of color. And so do I, and to find what's appropriate to it.
And when you designed the Woolworth model apartment, were you giving any brief about who to design it for? Did you have restrictions, or did you have many clients' profiles in your mind, and you had to make it work for many people?
One of the reasons I was brought in, one of the principal reasons, other than doing good work, was knowing how, to be candid, rich people live, how international rich people who might have an interest in. I would say that most of the people who buy a place in that area, in these buildings, don't live in them. They travel from around the world. Their interests are, involve art and entertaining. They're proud to be in that building because it's so iconic. So I designed with this idea in mind of the world I was introduced to when I came to New York and started working for Mark. And that was the world of high-end design and sophistication. And that clientele, especially at that time, really had an interest in learning. That's one thing that I feel is really, it's our job as designers to teach, to open to not just say this should be here and that should be there. Why is it important? Why does that? Is it the history? Is it the scale? Is it the function? Is all the above? That's what I learned when I was working with Mark. And then bringing that to the history of this building, it was a great opportunity for me to show my skills and my way of thinking, but for me to honor and respect this building with such great deep history.
So you're really designing and telling a story without words, using your creativity?
It's a journey, like what I said before. When you go to a space, especially something as spectacular as that, the first thing you do is you get off and you go to a window, because you're on the 41st floor, and I'm not sure what the boot, but it's yes, the story is what's outside the window. You're looking out over Manhattan to an amazing building.
Quite a challenge.
Yeah. So interior, I also wanted to keep things quiet. If it was active and it was the colors were vivid and the shapes were aggressive, you would be competing with outside. So my job here, I felt, was to keep it quiet and, as I said, like a sanctuary, so you can marvel at the city.
So here you didn't have a specific client, but I have a question to you from interior designer to interior designer. What is the ideal client? Is there such?
Absolutely. In my mind, I have a very clear understanding of the ideal client. And it's not what they look like, or well, it does have to do with money to some degree. It has to be a bunch of it. But it's somebody who communicates well. If it's a couple, if they communicate well together. I'll start with that because you can really tell straight off if there's going to be a trouble if you can see that there's not a conversation between the decision makers. And how do they respect each other if there are children involved? What are their priorities? I don't want to judge people, but from a business perspective, if I see trouble, I'll avoid it. And that's the ideal client. In addition to that, is someone who's done that before, hopefully many times. Somebody who understands that this is not a perfect business.
They don't get hysterical over.
Right. Things. Understand that things take a long time. They understand things go wrong. And they also have better things to do than micromanage us. I mean, I love collaboration. The best things that we do are with the input of the people we're working for. But the people who are my ideal clients, their priorities are, yes, to create this great environment, but they have their children, they have their family, they have their community, they have their businesses, and they can put their priorities there and know that I'm on their team. I often say it from the start, I'm your collaborator, I'm collaborator, I'm not your competition. And that's very important. I hope I made my point.
Like this, you avoid maybe some duality, or who is going to be the boss?
Who is going to be the boss? They're the boss. My clients, obviously. I mean, they pay the bills. They make the decision. But what I emphasize as best I can, because you can't preach and turn people off that way. But what a client may need to hear for their own sake, and if they're open to listening to it, is how important it is that they participate properly in order to make the success of the project. Be a decision maker. Be available. Have an opinion. Don't change your mind. Pay your bills on time. Be respectful. Understand.
It's a lot to ask from a client.
It's a lot to ask because because it's disposable income. It's aspirational. You're terrified. You don't get anything back for there's no return from some things. And when people think of spreadsheets only and don't see the value or don't value the experience, then it makes it very difficult. I can still do it, but there are people whose priorities might be a gorgeous, beautiful paint job. And that room might cost $40,000. Somebody else would be understandably saying that's out of your mind, So I have to find out where my client finds value. And there isn't anything such as an unlimited budget. So I have to design to that budget and find out where to spend maybe more disproportionate money so that room that needs to be painted gets painted, but as gorgeous something else, or has great media, or whatever it is. So it's about, for me, they're the boss. I need to find out where their priorities are, and I need them to balance it down because I can't do everything you've asked me to do for that money. So let's talk about priorities, and let's do our wish list. And if you can do this, I'm talking about the ideal client who is in this conversation. It doesn't happen, right? But you asked me about ideal,
okay.
so
Ideal
this
client.
is ideal.
Okay.
That would be it.
I understand you design also bespoke furniture and go very much into details. Is that only for you private projects, or do you also produce or design for other companies?
The question is whether I design my custom furniture only and solely for my clients, or if I have a commercial. Mm-hmm. I have a couple of licenses right now. I've been asked to create a line of furniture that's in discussion right now. I'm very, very excited about it. The majority of the things I've done to date have been individual pieces for clients. But of course, now that I'm asked to bring some of this to the public eye, I'm going through my files and selecting some of those. And of course, I love the idea of the reality of designing new pieces too.
I read that you design for a lot of celebrities. Is that more of a challenge because they are more demanding?
Designing for celebrities. Well, I'm not a celebrity designer as some people are. I have designed for some people who are celebrities. So in my very limited experience, it ranges from perfectly nice, perfectly easy, real people, to maybe a touch of entitlement and distance. When you work for Paul Simon for a number of years, you find out that this man is more busy and has other priorities than taking your phone calls all the time, for instance. And that can sometimes get tricky when you need to get things done. And of course, there's something we all understand, it's called client amnesia. Client amnesia means that they didn't respond in time, or they said yes, and then they later say no, or it's just, and I didn't know it cost that much, or what have you. They don't have to be celebrities. Don't have to be celebrities to have this. So there's a commonality. Clients are clients. And we're not perfect either, by any means. And I think that's where the humanity of this really has to stay real. And that's where the business of this is challenging. Because we're not producing something, that's just 1, 2, 3. There's emotion, there's time, there's disposable income, there's aspirations, there's insecurity, there's marital rifts, there's, everything involved.
We get to know our clients very well.
Sometimes too well, right? Sometimes too well.
What are your, what do you envision doing in the next 12 months, 2 years? How do you plan ahead? At what time limit? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
It's interesting. I'm here with my business director sitting straight in front of me, and we are putting together business plans. I've never done that. I've never said I have goals at a certain time. I've been very fortunate. Work has come in, but I'm not very interested in developing this furniture line. And I'm speaking a new language. Roles and responsibility, goals and measurable times, and all of this stuff. So that's important to me. I have a few new projects. Of course, we need them to come in. So developing that, I always have a hard time networking for business. So that's still this bubble out there I don't understand. But I expect to be, killing it over here in Israel after this, and I'll be seeing you in the next 12 months and 2 years. I don't know what that means, but I hope so.
Okay. Now, last question. If you could choose, who would you like to design a house for? Anyone in the world.
Oh, I wish I had this slide again. In many ways, I have such different answers for this, but I'll just say, depending on who's there next, the White House. But not just the White House, for anybody. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you
kind.
very much. Thank you, everybody.